Hello, dear friends. You are with the InStyle Knitting Studio. This time, I want to suggest that you knit a cap in English ribbing and this snood. The cap I made is for a head circumference of 54 to 55 centimeters. The height of the cap is about 22 centimeters. I knitted the cap using 2 threads. The snood was also made with 2 threads. However, I recommend using a thinner thread for the snood and a slightly thicker one for the cap. Ideally, I would have knitted the cap with 3 threads and the snood with 2. But I made both the cap and the snood with 2 threads. Therefore, I will be sewing a liner here. The snood is 30 centimeters wide and about 130 centimeters long. I stitched it together. Here is the seam. This is how the snood looks. If you find this material interesting, then stay with me. Let's get started with the knitting. What will we need to knit such a set of coarse yarn? I have cone semi-wool yarn. I knitted using 2 threads. I have a thread density of about 200 meters per 100 grams. But, of course, you will use your own yarn and calculate your own knitting density. So, I think my yardage won't be too important for you. Next, we need size 3.75 and size 4.75 needles, a marker to indicate the beginning of the row, a measuring tape, a needle with a wide eye, scissors, a notebook with a pen for calculations, for notes and a pom-pom if you plan to attach one to the cap. I used 103 grams for the cap, as my scales indicated. For the snood it was 290 grams. Let's start knitting the cap. I need a cap. But for a head circumference of 54 to 55 centimeters, I calculated my knitting density and figured out how many stitches I need to cast on for that head size. If you are having trouble determining how many stitches to cast on for your head circumference, watch the tutorial above. I explain how I do it there. So, we calculated how many stitches to cast on. I took needles 4.75. Next we cast on the number of stitches we've calculated onto the needles. Using the universal method, the most common one. I have a lesson linked above. Go through, take a look, if you don't know how to perform the universal cast on, and close it all in a circle. Here, check the suggestion above and see how it's done. In my case, I cast on 45 stitches. 1 stitch was used when closing into a circle, so I currently have 44 stitches on the needles. Keep in mind that English ribbing is very plush, so there shouldn't be too many stitches. To avoid making a huge hat, you should read the knitting density well. So, we've cast on the stitches, now we will knit the first row. I have closed it into a circle, pulling the yarn. Now we will knit the first row. The first row is knitted as follows. We knit a knit stitches when working in the round. I think you know that they are worked through the front loop. We have knitted the first knit stitch. Next, we drop the yarn. The yarn is in front of the work, and we drop the next stitch this way. Like this, and the yarn goes over here. We dropped it. The next one is again knit. The next stitch, we again drop the yarn in front of the work. Next is another knit stitch. We check that nothing got twisted at the start when closing into a circle. We drop the next stitch, the yarn in front of the work. We drop the stitch onto the right needle. It's not necessary to drop the stitch, I'll show you now. In place of dropping, you can make a yarn over, needle towards you. Yarn over, yarn away from you. And after that we drop the stitch onto the right needle like this. If it will be easier for you, next is a knit stitch. And again, we have a yarn over and we slip the stitch, knit 1, yarn over. We slip knitwise. If we're not doing a yarn over, the yarn is in front. and we slip the stitch for some reason. I find it more comfortable not to make the yarn over. This is how I slip the stitch. I think it is quicker. We continue knitting this way to the end of the row, so that's it. I have reached the end of the row, right here. I placed a marker so that it would be clearer for you. When I knit, I hardly use a marker myself. I rely on this thread. But to make it clearer, I placed a marker at the start of the row, so now we will be knitting the second row. Look at what we have. We have a knit stitch. The first knit stitch. It stands alone by itself. We will slip it. If there is a single stitch, we just slip it. Just like in the first row, the yarn is in front. And we slip it onto the right needle. Like this, we slipped it. Now we see the double stitch. This is our yarn over and the slipped stitch. We knit them together, purlwise. Like this, we knit them purlwise. Next, we have a knit stitch, one knit stitch, we slip it. Again we have a double stitch. This was the slipped stitch and the yarn over from the previous row. We knit them together, purlwise. I see them as a classic purl. Next, we have another knit stitch. At the beginning of the row, we still cannot quite see which stitch is which. Well, you can believe me. So, this here is our knit stitch, one without a yarn over. We simply take it off. The yarn in front of the work, we take it off. Next, we have a paired stitch, like two loops. Here is our yarn over from the previous row and the lifted stitch. We knit them together and as a purl stitch. Next is again in a single stitch, we take it off. Paired stitch, we knit it as a purl stitch. Thus, we will continue until the end of the row. By the way, we can take off the single stitch like this, as I showed, or with a yarn over. Here we make a yarn over and simply take it off onto the right needle, like this. Next is a paired stitch. Two together, so we knit them as a purl stitch. Next is a yarn over, and we take it off. Next, two together, we knit as a purl stitch. That's it. We continue this way until the end of the row. So, we knit the third row. We see that at the beginning of the row, we have a paired stitch. We knit this paired stitch together, but already with a knit stitch, like this. Next, we have one stitch. We do not knit it, but take off the yarn in front of the work. Next, we have a paired stitch. We knit it as a knit stitch. Again, one stitch without a yarn over. We take it off onto the right needle without knitting it, making a yarn over, so. We knit the paired stitch as a knit stitch in this row, and we take off the single stitch with a yarn over, in this way. We will knit until the end of the row. Well, again, here we can make a yarn over. Here, for example, we have one stitch. We can make a yarn over towards us, needle towards us. Yarn over, yarn away from us. We made a yarn over and take it off onto the right needle, but, as I said, I don't really like it this way. I immediately transfer the strand here before starting work and take it off. That's it. The doubled thread then. We knit both together with a knit stitch, while the single one we simply take off, making a yarn over. We knit to the end of the row. That's it, friends, we have finished the third row, and it turns out we already know everything, we have all learned, and we will just repeat from here on. Now, I will explain the main principle, by which you will easily understand how simple and quick this is to knit. If, for example, you have been knitting, set your work aside, and then forgot which row you are on, and what you need to knit there. Everything is clearly visible and simple here. Look, here's the beginning of our row. This is our fourth row. There is a single stitch. It's clear that it is a knit stitch. It may not be very visible here in the first rows, Well, for instance, I can see it a little better if I knit a bit further. You will definitely see whether the stitch is knit or purl. Look, a knit stitch, if it's alone without a yarn over, here. By the way, at the end of the row, I took off the last stitch with a yarn over, so we see at the beginning of the row one knit stitch without a yarn over. We simply take it off, like this. We took it off. Next, we have a doubled stitch, a doubled one, and let's see what it is. It's a purl stitch. Let's move the yarn over a bit. And at the beginning, we have a yarn over, followed by the purl stitch as can be seen. Therefore, we always knit the doubled stitch together, whether as a knit or a purl. If the purl stitch is visible here, that means we knit both together. So with that yarn over, we knit both together as a purl stitch. Next, we again have a single stitch. We simply take it off. Next comes a doubled. Here's a yarn over, and the next stitch is a purl stitch. So, we knit this double stitch as a purl stitch. We slip the single one. Here is the double stitch. We knit it as a purl. We slip the single one. Let's finish this row to the end. I will show how we will knit in the next row. We completed this row of mine. The last stitch was knit two together. As a purl, we move the marker. Here is our next row. Look, we have a double stitch again. Here is our yarn over. You can already see the knit stitch here. Therefore, we will knit these two stitches together as a knit. Next, we have a single purl. It does not matter whether it's a single purl or a single knit here. If it is alone without a yarn over, we just slip it to the right needle. The double stitch, that is two together with a yarn over, is what we will knit. We always knit it. Here we have a knit stitch. That is the yarn over and the knit stitch from the previous row. Thus, we knit this double stitch as a knit. In the previous row, we had a double stitch, and the second stitch was a purl. Therefore, we knitted it as a purl. In this row, we have a knit. So, we knit two together as a knit. We slip the single stitch to the right needle. Thus we slip the single one and knit the double one as a knit. We knit the yarn over and the stitch together as a knit. This is the essence of it. Knitting the English reticule in a circle. We drop a single stitch and we address the double stitch. First we have a yarn over. The next stitch is either a knit or a purl. In this case, we have a knit stitch. Therefore, we knit two stitches together. If we have a yarn over and a purl stitch, then we will purl two together. In this case, we have a knit. Thus, we are knitting the knit stitch. This is how we will knit our cap. And as I said, we are not afraid to set the knitting aside and forget where we left off. We can check at any moment and see a double knit stitch is coming up. So, we will knit together through the front. We drop the single stitch. If there is a purl stitch instead of a knit here, we will purl two together. I think it is all quite simple. The main thing is to understand. That's it, friends. We will knit in this way until we reach the desired height of the cap. It is already beginning to expand slowly. It is not very visible right now. I will knit a little more. When the rows are well defined, I will show you again how I knit. That is, the stitches will be very visible then. We will look again at how to knit this cap. Look, friends. I have knitted a little, and now our pattern is clear. Now I want to show you how to recognize our stitches. Here is the beginning of my row. Look. Here a little mess. This is one knit stitch. There is no yarn over in front of her. So, we will take it off, here. The yarn before working, we slide it onto the right needle without knitting. Next, we have a double stitch. Here, the yarn over from the previous row is visible, and here is the stitch that is purl. Accordingly, these two stitches are double stitch, we will knit as purl, because our second stitch is purl. So, we knit two together as purl. Next, we again have a single stitch, we take it off. Next is double, and since we are dealing with purl, we will knit these two stitches together as purl. In the next row, instead of that double stitch, there will also be double stitches. But instead of this second purl, in the next row, we will already have knit. So we will knit them as knit. This is in the next row. In this row, we are knitting as purl. And any single stitch, we simply slide onto the right needle. That's it. We will continue to knit our hat this way. We will meet at the moment when we need to start decreasing it. Well then. Friends, I have finished knitting. Yes, I need height. And now we will start decreasing. My hat's height is now about 19 to 20 centimeters. Here is the beginning of my row. What are we doing now? Now we will switch from English ribbing to regular 1x1 ribbing. So, the beginning of our row starts with a double knit stitch and a yarn over. We will knit them together as a regular knit stitch. Next, we have a purl stitch. We knit it as purl. Here my yarn has finished, so it goes loosely. Next, we have a knit and a yarn over. We knit them together as knit. We knit the purl stitch as a purl stitch, that is, we knit the regular ribbing of 1x1 with a double stitch. Here is the knit stitch and the yarn over. We knit these together as a knit stitch. The purl stitch we knit one as a purl stitch. Thus, we will now knit to the end of the row. After that, we will knit 2 rows straight without any decreases in the regular ribbing of 1x1. Or you can knit 3, but I will knit 2 rows. That is, now we are knitting the regular ribbing of 1x1. From the double stitch, we knit together as a knit stitch, while the single stitch we knit as a purl stitch. If you, for example, stopped, and what you have here is not a knit but a purl and a yarn over, it means we knit them together as a purl stitch, and the single stitch will be a knit stitch, and we will knit it as a knit stitch. That is, in my case, it turns out that I knit the two together as a knit stitch. The single one is a purl stitch, and I knit it as a purl stitch. That's it, in general. We knit to the end of the row, and then knit straight without any decreases for 2 rows, normally, and in ribbing of 1x1. So, we have finished knitting. Now we will start decreasing the stitches. Here we have a knit stitch, the start of the row, a knit and a purl. The knit stitch, we turn this way and knit both stitches together, the knit and purl, through the back loop. Here, we have a knit stitch and a purl again. We turn the knit stitch, as if knitting a grandmother's stitch, and knit the knit and purl together through the back loop. We do this to ensure the stitch does not twist and lays nicely, like a braid. If we don't turn it, it won't lay nicely, but this way looks great. So we get a braid here, and again it forms a beautiful stitch. That is, we're now knitting this entire row while decreasing the stitches. From 2, we knit 1 by bringing the knit and purl together through the back loop. But first, we turn the knit stitch. This way we knit to the end of the row, thereby decreasing the stitches, and only knit stitches will remain on the needles for the next 2 rows. We will knit straight. You can knit 3 or 4 rows straight. You decide based on your height. Or what you need, so now we will do the decrease and knit, say 2, 3 or 4 rows straight. After that, we simply tighten our cap. That's it, let's knit. Well, dear friends, I have finished knitting. So I finished a row with decreases and knitted not 1 row, not 2, and not even 3, but a whole 4 rows. In total, I have 5 rows of knit stitches with decreases. So maybe I started decreasing a bit too early. But I think in principle it should be fine. At this point, I have approximately the height of the hat. It's hard to say exactly here. It comes out to about 22 centimeters. Now we break the yarn. We leave about, I don't know, 20 centimeters. We thread it into the needle and there. Now we need to transfer all these open stitches onto this yarn, catch them, so they don't unravel. Here I have the tail, the beginning of the row. We can take off the marker. We don't need it anymore. So here is the beginning of the row, and I'm just transferring all the stitches onto the yarn with the needle. We are going to gather the top now. By the way, the last rows are very hard to knit. Since there are few stitches, I had 22 stitches in each row, and it was very hard to knit. I had to constantly pull the cable out every 2 or 3 stitches, literally. Thus, we transfer everything onto the yarn. Slowly remove it from the needle. We free our needle so that everything stays on the yarn. This can also be done with a hook without a needle. That's it. I've transferred all the stitches onto the yarn, and now we just gather the top. I have 22 stitches, and I think it should gather well. That is, we pull the yarn tight but don't overstretch it. Let's not get carried away so it doesn't break. This is how I will gather it. You can even go through the stitches like this for extra security. That is, going around like this under the stitches to catch our stitches once more and pull them to the inside. In general, we will secure it here. We'll pull it to the inside and hide the ends there. This is how the top turned out. Here the transition to one-on-one ribbing is, I would say, not noticeable, but it is specifically noticeable on the knit stitches after the decreases. Here, the crown is a little bit visible, but I think it looks quite nice. In general, the hat is ready. I believe that such a hat knitted with this fluffy ribbing will look great even with a fold. But I decided to make a regular hat this time. Now let's measure how tall it is in centimeters. The height of my hat is about 22 centimeters. In principle, the hat is ready, but I will attach a pom-pom. Here is a great pom-pom that I made myself. For those interested, here's a hint. Go check out my masterclass on how I make such pom-poms. Let's attach the pom-pom. For this, we will need a hook. I have a 3.5. So, we insert the hook from the inside near the center close. We grab one ribbon or thread, whatever you have, and pull it inside, and then opposite. We insert it into the center, and a little closer to ourselves, we insert our hook and grab. The second ribbon, pull it inside. Okay, we don't really need the hook anymore. We turn it inside out. Here are our ribbons. On the inside, I usually tie a knot and secure the ribbon with 2. Bows, by the way, the ribbons should also be melted a bit so they don't unravel. We pulled it tight. You can trim the ribbons a bit if they turned out to be too long. Here is the hat we got, by the way. I made this hat quite thin. I will be sewing in a lining. I slightly regret it. I should have knitted the hat with 3 threads. Now it turned out to be very loose and light. But I want to wear it in winter, so I will make a fleece lining here. Overall, the hat is ready. Now we start knitting with the thread. I have size 4 needles with a 0.75 and quite a long cable. Right now they are free, so I decided to use them. We take our yarn and cast on stitches. So now we need to count how many stitches we need to cast on. For this again we need a swatch to calculate how many stitches we need to cast on. I will have a width of about 30 centimeters. Maybe a little more. I calculated that I need to cast on 42 stitches. Here, we also need to ensure that the number of stitches is divisible by 2, so it divides evenly by 2. I have 42 stitches. We take our yarn. Leave a sufficiently long yarn tail. In general, we cast on in the classic way. We cast on 42 stitches. I want to note that we cast on very, very loosely. Because we are using English ribbing, which is quite fluffy and stretches. To ensure the edge does not pull tight, we need to cast on our stitches very loosely. I've cast on 42 stitches. Now we take one needle and turn our knitting. Next we knit in English ribbing. How long will I knit? I will knit about 120 centimeters, 130, I am not sure yet. I will keep knitting. I will see how to knit the English ribbing. I also showed this in my lesson. Here, follow this link and take a look. There are also turning rows, just like here, and I show how to knit this ribbing. I slip the first stitch. Next, we knit 1 stitch knitwise. After that, we slip as purl. Next, again the knit side. We remove it as a purl. The last stitch is a purl from the back, and we turn the work. We slip the first stitch. Next, knit 2 stitches together. We knit the next stitch as a knit through the front loop. Where we have 1 stitch, we slip it as a purl. Next again, 2 stitches together knit. The next stitch is 1, we slip it as a purl. Next, 2 stitches together knit. The next stitch is 1, we slip it as a purl, in this way. Just as we knit the second row, we will knit the subsequent rows, but I believe, in my lesson you will see there, I explain everything in more detail. And I think it will not be difficult for you knit such a cowl along with me. In general, I am going to knit now. We will meet after I knit enough to a suitable length. And I will then tell you how many centimeters I ended up with. That's it, I'm getting to work. So friends, we have finished knitting. My cowl ended up being about 130 centimeters long. And here I did not close the last row. I finished at the point. When I have 1 purl stitch, then a yarn over, and a knit stitch, that is, I have a double stitch knit with a yarn over. At this moment, we leave a fairly long end of the yarn, about 3 times the width of my cowl. And we cut it and thread it into a needle with a large eye. Now, I will show how I close and sew the cowl. We fold our cowl in half, simply without any twisting. And here are our 2 sides. One is closed, and the other is open. This was our last row, and this is the beginning of our knitting. Here's the needle with the thread. What do? We insert the needle into the edge stitch, the loop of the open row, left to right, and pull the thread through here. After this, we look for the closed row. Here at the beginning of our knitting, the edge stitch. Here is our knit stitch going. The edge stitch is here at the side. through 2 half stitches from right to left. We insert the needle with the thread here and pull it through. After this, we go back to the open stitch. So, look, we can already slip this stitch off. And again, initially, we entered away from ourselves. The second time we enter towards ourselves. So, here we pull the thread through. Our edge stitches have joined. Now I will sew a little. And in middle of the seam, I will show you so that it is clearly visible how to perform this seam. This is what my seam looks like. It is of course visible, but not too much. Now, I want to show you how I sew. Here, my thread came out here. Look, we have a purl stitch here, 1 purl stitch. What is the principle? If there is a purl stitch, we insert the needle away from ourselves. We pulled it through, but do not take the stitch off the needle. Next, we look for the other side. Here is our other side that needs to be stitched. We look for a purl here. Here is a purl. Here we will have a knit stitch, so we look for the first loop. Under the loop, we insert the needle from right to left and pull the thread through. We pulled it through. After this, we always hold the thread like this. Under the needle, we place our working thread. After this, we insert again into the same purl stitch. But already towards us, initially, we introduce it away from us. And the second time we bring it towards us, we let it, pull the thread, and take it off. That's it. We have knitted the purl stitch. We can pull it a little, but do not tighten too much so that the seam does not constrict our fabric. Next, we have a knit stitch and a yarn over. If we have a knit stitch, we initially insert the needle towards us. If it's a purl, then away from us, lead towards us. After that, we take the yarn. As I said, like this. Yarn over, always keep the yarn over under the needle. Next, we look for the knit stitch here. Here it is, the knit stitch. We pull it from right to left. After that, I again pass the yarn here. Yarn over, and after that, we initially insert it towards us. Now we will insert the needle away from us. Pull it through and take it off the needle. We tighten. Here we have a loop like a knit stitch. That's it. Let's finish our seam. Here is the last knit stitch. Next, we have a purl away from us. Next, we look for the purl on the other side. We poke the needle in here, and after that, the purl again towards us. We take it off and pull. And then it turns out, I will treat this edge stitch as a knit stitch. That is, first towards us. Because I had a purl here, pulled towards us. Next, I look for the edge stitch here. From right to left, here my needle has already gone. Let this stitch be so. So, in the edge stitch from right to left. And after that I return to the front stitch away from myself. This is how we finished sewing. Here, it turned out to be somewhat of a loop. And next, we will just hide the end of the thread. That's it, dear friends. We finished sewing our snood. Now I will thread the yarn and show you how it looks from this side and from the reverse side. So here, look at the seam. It is of course visible. I think it looks neat. From the reverse side, it looks the same. Here is the snood we ended up with. Mine is 30 centimeters wide, and its length is about 130 centimeters. So, we have completed our set with the English ribbing. Here is the complete set, a cap and a snood, that's all. Thank you for paying attention to my channel. Subscribe, give it a thumbs up, and always stay stylish. Wishing everyone well.